Well, welcome back. It's good to see you. Well, more accurately, it's good to imagine you. When I create these Hilton Academy YouTube videos, whether it's creating the flow of my thoughts before I get in front of the camera or recording them as I'm doing right now, I imagine you, only one person, sitting here with me in the studio, right there. I imagine that you will enjoy a good bourbon together with me, or maybe we'll light up a cigar. I imagine that we're having a casual conversation, a meandering one at that, and then we stumble on an idea and we start to consider it more deeply. So it's just you and I. That's kind of how I think about these when I put them together. Perhaps it's because I know most of you personally. I think the bulk of you I know. I've either met you at a conference or in a classroom or something like that, or perhaps in one of our School of Leadership in-person courses over a year, or met you in some other group along the way, or I know you well from other kinds of environments. But I also imagine just one person sitting across the table, no matter where, and that's how I watch YouTube videos. I think that's probably why I imagine it that way. I also listen to podcasts that same way. It's just me and the person talking to me. It's not a group event. So I like this medium because of that dynamic. I treat the podcasts and this in a similar way, and I'm only imagining that you are right here with me, or in a podcast you're probably driving, or maybe you're walking somewhere, and you can hear the voice in your ear and you don't see any of the rest of this. But these platforms to me are fairly personal, and I like that. So then let's get personal. You're probably a leader in some way. Maybe you have a management responsibility or a leadership responsibility of some sort, or you're a supervisor. You're somebody who, based upon your personality and your experience and maybe even your position, you have a lot of influence over how people work and how they live. So I say it all the time, leadership is hard, and the challenge is not to make it harder than it needs to be. And by that, of course, I mean good leadership is hard. Bad leadership is freaking easy, right? So you and I can do that in a lot of ways. We can make leadership harder than it needs to be by maybe solving the wrong problems. That is, by solving a problem that's presented to us, not solving the root problem. We can make it harder than it needs to be by assuming that every problem that comes our way is ours to solve. Probably isn't. Or by making decisions based upon how we or other people feel, or based upon strong emotions or loud personalities. We can make it harder than it needs to be by gripping the how of things so tightly that we become inflexible and lose sight of the why. Or by not pausing to celebrate and genuinely celebrate the good things, little things, and big things along the way. We can make it harder than it needs to be by not perpetually stoking the fires of our own curiosity, and by not owning up to our own failings, by not forgiving, by not taking responsibility for one, whom we trust, two, our perspective, and three, our own behavior right here, right now. You know, we can make leadership harder than it needs to be by not thinking backwards about time, not looking out to the future, imagining a future, and then working back to today and then toward that future. So, are you making your leadership job harder than it needs to be? So it's the dead of winter right now as we produce this video today. And our studio is located on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. And we're just past winter solstice. So the very, very short days are getting a little bit longer with each one that passes. But the Pacific Northwest coastal weather has really tightened its relentlessly wet, gray, cold grip on us. I wake up in the dark, I go through dark gray days, and I go to bed in the dark. And maybe that doesn't bother you, but I'm one of those unfortunate souls who feels the cold, wet blanket of sunlessness a great deal. If left to my own propensities, I would sink into the doldrums of dark winter, and I have done that in many times in the past. So somewhere along the way, maybe a decade or more ago, I began to wonder if the constraints that these winters place on me could be used for my benefit, and maybe even for the benefit of others that I love and serve. So rather than resist the dark, cold season, I started to ask this question: what does this season allow me to do that I would otherwise not be able to do? By turning the constraint of the dark, the night, even if it's daytime, into an invitation, I began to slowly embrace the apparent constraints rather than resist them. So throughout the energetic summer and into the fall, each year I collect books, for example, that I'd like to read, and I stack them into what I call a winter pile. Outlined chapters of books that I want to write are created in the summertime or the springtime, but then I dive into the uninterrupted, slow pace of winter so I can transform those ideas and that research into words. All the books that I've published to date were written in the darkest parts of winter. And there's 3 more now that are nearly ready for publishing, and they were also written in the coldest, darkest parts of the year. And as of the recording of this video, I have got Letters to Leaders that is going to come out soon, and Built for the Storm, and The Skilled Facilitator. They're all now just a few hours away, a few hours of hard, focused winter work, from being handed over into the maw of the cruel editors who rip the very soul out of it, and I argue with them, and then we put it back, and then I get my way, right? So even business ideas and partnerships and investments and pivotal decisions have all grown out of winter. There's a novel that I wrote 40 years ago titled The Guide. It actually came from a dream that I had. I woke up early in the morning with this dream so vivid and so real that I couldn't shake it. And so 2 or 3 months later, I began to write the book and stayed with it until I wrote the entire book. It's now edited and ready for publishing. And it'll finally be published in the spring of this year. Following the gift of this winter right now, the night, the constraint of winter, it's actually become a forced blessing for me. But it didn't used to be that way. I dreaded the constraints of the night or of the dark or of the constraint in any way placed on me. I resisted it. I became grouchy and irascible, and I put life on hold, metaphorically, while I waited for the grip of the dark, depressing winter to release me so that I could go about really living and enjoying life and leading. My personality is a summery one. I like to get up early. I like staying up late. I like being outside all the time. I love the sunshine. I love breathing in the air of the forest. I love flying in a small plane over this beautiful region at 2,500 feet and piloting that thing wherever I want to go as the sun bathes the mountains in optimism and soul-nourishing experiences. Riding one of my motorcycles in the fresh air and breathing in the warm scents of the countryside in the summer and the spring and the fall captivate me. But there's a gift in the winter. There are opportunities in all dark seasons. Perhaps you're in one of those right now. If you run across this video months or years even after we've created, and you find yourself in the glorious days of summer, but you're also in a dark winter or maybe a dark night experience, you may want to ask yourself the same question. What does this dark time, with all of its disappointing constraints, allow me to do that otherwise I would not? What opportunities does it afford? Trust me, my friend, there are many. If your winter, your dark night, is upon you right now, and it feels like an insurmountable obstacle, like a huge no, may I invite you to look for the rewards that it might also provide. They're there, they're concealed, but just barely. Search just a little, you'll find them. Look past the disappointment. Look past the unrequited commitment. and past the death of a dream, past broken promises or financial losses, past the wound in that relationship, and see if you can discover opportunities that you didn't see before. Then once you've discovered them, lean in, embrace them, and do what needs to be done. All of the great leaders in human history have done just that. And doing so will not likely ease the frustration or pain, I'll tell you that. But it will put it all in a different context and take a little bit of the edge off of it. Take a deep breath, and rather than resisting the dreariness of that dark night, embrace it and then use it to do good work. Hard things are as much a gift to us as the smooth, bright, sunny, easy things. Dark nights, winters, if you will, can be as valuable as those long, bright summer days. To be frank with you, sometimes they're even more valuable down the road. So leadership is hard. But don't make it harder than it needs to be by bitterly raging against the constraints of the dark, disappointing seasons of your day or your week or your life. We need you to succeed, and we need you to lead well. Here's to you.